Okay, great. My name is John Grden, and I work for a company called Infrared 5. Chris Allen's right there in the back of the room. Raise your hand, Chris. There he is right there. You can, I don't know, we'll talk business. If everyone wants to talk about Infrared 5, we'll tell you what we do. Part of what we do is Flash and Unity work, and we do a lot of that in Red 5 server stuff. That's about it. That's me. Conference notes. They asked me to put in some information real quick. Conference note, everything is running 30 minutes late, so if you're looking at your itinerary, just back everything up 30 minutes and it should be pretty close to on time. No, it's not my fault. Yes, I hate Ewoks. Thank you. Tell me you weren't disappointed when Jedi came out, right? And it should have been Wookiees and they came out with Ewoks. What the hell was he thinking? Anyway. No issues there. So here I'm here today to talk to you about intro to Unity iPhone, and I am going to cover some basics. I'm not going to get into the Apple provisioning or anything like that. I'm going to talk to you about workflow, why we chose to do it for the trench run game, and then take a look at the IDE, talk about scripting, tips and tricks, things you shouldn't do, should do. I should start off that I'm by no means an expert with the iPhone, but I have learned quite a bit in the last 4 or 5 months doing this game, and a lot of it had to do with 1.5, so it's a great version. They've done a lot of great things with it. I can't really speak highly enough about it, about the experience. It was tremendous, especially coming from a Flash and Flex background. It was kind of a mind blow. So great workflow. Easily ported back to the web. That was another key feature that we loved about this. We spent all this time optimizing and creating it for the iPhone, and then could quickly turn it right back around and put it out on the web. It was an awesome experience. It was something that gives us the ability to take these kind of projects to our clients and basically have another point of sale. If they want it, great. If they don't want it, but if they do, the turnaround time on it was really quick. To adjust from accelerometer controls and touchscreen controls, to keyboard input is really simple. So that only took a couple of days. And, we had a product that was up and running. And just for fun, I've never actually used that option where it tells you to play the video backwards. So I just wanted to do that, and that's what you're seeing here. You've seen that in Keynote, right? Who uses that? Well, I used it, so there you go. One of the cool features is Xcode. It has Xcode output. So that may sound obvious, but I don't know that it really is obvious. It is a huge undertaking. And with 1.5, their workflow increased, in my opinion, tenfold because it just updated the project, and I was able to work with a guy who was working on the Cocoa front end. So it was a hybrid app. The game obviously is in Unity. The front end work was done in Cocoa on the Xcode side, and we lived harmoniously, me and the other developer, doing this. So it worked out really well. Very marketable. Obviously, right now in these times, people are willing to spend 99 cents, $4.99, $10.99 for games that take up 15 minutes of your time. So that was one of the reasons why we were able to sell the game and actually put it out as a paid product, to get paid to make it, because we were doing it for iPhone. So it provided us that that revenue stream, if you want to call it that. Sounds very technical. I'm not the marketing guy. I am actually a developer, but I can even see the genius in that. And that, otherwise, if we were trying to put this out in any other platform, it'd be very difficult to sell. It'd also take a lot more development and all those type of things. But this game ended up being a good, 15-minute, 20-minute. Actually, the replayability on this game is awesome. I'm still playing it. I developed it. Chris and I are still going at it on the high scores, and we don't have anybody out there with us yet, so it's all talk right now. But I'd like to just say that, like I said yesterday, level 43, baby. So the trench run arcade, we have arcade levels, and it's good. So, and then it also allows, what I didn't know yesterday is it also allows people, dev teams to be small, if you want it to be. So you could just be one guy, one developer, one girl, and develop your game your way, your style, and call the shots. And then you can put it out on iPhone's App Store or Apple's App Store, and market it yourself and do it yourself. And so we've seen some really good success with people doing that, even on our team, Keith Peters being one of them, who does work for Infrared 5, which I didn't say yesterday, but it's where Keith is. He's a good friend of ours, and he's done very well porting some Flash apps to the iPhone. Okay, so some notable items. Poly counts, about 10,000 for just like a normal game. If your meshes are animated, between 2,000 and 3,000. That actually does take a hit on the CPU, but you still have some room there. 30 draw calls or less is what they recommend. On the 3GS, we've noticed that we've had quite a bit more room, so we actually see 40 draw calls. But in your game development, we'll talk about some of the ways that you can stay under 30 and keep things together with batching and GUI manager and a few other things. We have obviously physics, shaders, and particles to deal with. And particles are nice, obviously in the iPhone. They actually account for one draw call. So with the X-Wings laser, we'll show you that it actually is an emitter that trades to all four cannons on the X-Wing. So the X-Wing shares the one emitter, and it's one draw call, and maybe you might fire out 10 to 12 lasers at a time, and it's just one draw call. It's really nice. And then you have your choice of languages, Unity script, which is JavaScript. It's strictly typed. And if you're coming from a Flash background, it's a lot like ActionScript. So for us as a development team, we do a lot of Flash, AS3, Air Apps, Flex, all that stuff. That meant that our team could jump in, any one of us could jump in and look at my code and determine what's going on and actually have some input on it. And so when we did code reviews, Chris by no means is a Unity developer, but he's a great ActionScript developer. And so at code review times, he was able to make very good notes and recommendations on just architecture and things like that. So it was like business as normal from that point of view, and that was really good for a house like us. And this is the only time that you'll see Falcon X. So who knows about Speed Racer? Any of Speed Racer fans from old? Yeah, see, when I was growing up, I used to watch Speed Racer. There you go. So Racer X, right? Long lost brother, Racer X would show up. So this would be Han Solo's long lost brother, Falcon X. Yeah, it was every time I've shown it, it's just quiet. So that's why you only see it now. There you go. All right, so scripting. I already talked about that a little bit. C#, Boo, and JavaScript are all equally as fast. It's using the Mono or .NET library, so you have access to a lot of that API. And you can mix and match if you need to. Don't recommend it. There are some caveats between, communication between like a C# script and a JavaScript, but you can do that, and it's been very easy to port things like off the wiki, little utilities and things from C# to JavaScript. That's been very easy to do in most cases, and most of the time on the wiki they're really good about posting a version of it in all three languages. Unity 3D JavaScript, very similar to AS3, like I said, 20 times faster than Flash or Director. And that part of the slide was actually meant for the website, not so much on the iPhone. In the event model, they have events, of course, but it's not like what you think with ActionScript, where everything is event dispatchable, and you can dispatch events from anything, and anything can listen to events off of your object. It's not quite like that. So. And then some of these links over here are just for you if you want to write this down, but I'll be posting this on my blog, so you can get these slides there if you're not able to write this down right now. Some of the information about editors and links to other things. Okay, and then we're going to move in, instead of getting into the slides, we're going to talk a little bit about the IDE, and then we'll move into the IDE, and we're going to actually get into the meat of some of the trench run game and take a look at that. Obviously, play, pause, and stop. You've got this ability in this IDE where the player and the editor are put together in one package, and it makes for a great workflow. You put something into your scene, hit play, see how it looks. You can actually pause and then move whatever objects in the scene. All the same stuff that you can do with Unity. Obviously, you can do it with the Unity iPhone. It's no different. Support for file formats like Maya and 3DS are all there. Of course, it does the same thing as the Unity IDE, where it converts it to FBX, and you can do that at runtime while you're playing. You can pause, go make a change in Maya or Max, save over the file, come back in, Unity re-imports it, and then updates the game. It's beautiful. Prefabs and then customizable layouts and hardware emulation are all part of that, so we'll get to that in a sec. Okay, so we'll take a look at the overview, and I apologize, but I'm going to try to get through. I have quite a bit to show you, so apologize if I go too fast. You can ask me afterwards. Okay, batching. I wrote all this stuff down. Good for me. All right, so one of the first things I want to show you is the trench, which turned out to be really quite a task. And what it is, what happens in the scene, here we have the trench. Hold on a second. So I'll zoom out. We have the trench. Hello. I've lost control, but whatever. Oh, there it is. Okay, so what we have is trench sections. The trench sections actually leapfrog each other. So as you fly down, you have a current trench section that you're in, they leapfrog, they have their own code, the whole thing. That's basically how, I don't know how other people have done it, but on the iPhone, that's how we did it. Now, what we did is we wrote an in-game editor, and I'll show you that, to create actual trench sections. So what I was using in a script to do at runtime to create my trench sections, I just converted it over to an editor script where I could drag the prefabs in, assign them, and then hit create, and it would create me a brand new randomized trench with all the sections. So if I take a closer look, oh, I have to select, I always get that wrong. Anyway, we get down to this trench. Hold on, let's just go down to one that's easier to see. This would be nice. You guys will get to see the exhaust port up close, whereas most people never get to see it, or, it's really hard to see, so, because it goes by so quickly, you know what I mean? All right, so hey, there you go. There's a quick sneak peek. Just like to point out, it looks exactly like the movie, so. I really went for detail on this game, so at any rate, a lot of things you'll recognize. So each trench section is made up of small panels, and I wanted randomness, and I didn't want to have to sit there and program this or create this in 3D Studio Max, very boring, because I knew that I could create a script that could do it for me. So that's exactly what that editor script does, is it takes all of these panels, puts them together in random order for me, flips them, scales them, and then batches them together. So the whole point of showing this is to show the relationships. All right, so back up just a little bit. So if I select, go into this view right here, and we select this side. Okay, so in the hierarchy, we have trench container 0, and then we have left combined children. So if we look at this, I'll select that again. You'll notice that the left side of the trench is not the right side is the right wall only, but the left side and bottom are one object. So what I'm doing there is I'm sharing the texture along all of those panels that make up the bottom and the left-hand side, and then Unity is batching them or combining them together since they use the same material, the same light, they use this, well, it's a light map shader. And so they share the materials, all of them, the same one material. So I'm able to combine them together. And what that equates to is at the game that all of these panels put together equal one draw call. So that's tremendous, obviously, in the phone when you need to create this huge experience of a lot of polygons or a lot of geometry. Combining them together for one draw call is awesome. So if we have the 4 trench sections, and each one of them accounts for 2 draw calls because you have the right wall, then you have 8, and that's great. You need that because you need it for lasers, you need it for obstacles, and everything else shooting at you. Okay, so that's really batching right there. And then you can use it for, and the other example was for the X-Wing, so I'll go to the X-Wing. New. Always does this to me. Whatever. Okay, so I won't go to the X-Wing. But the X-Wing, I'll just show it to you here. The X-Wing is actually made up of different parts, the body, the cockpit, and then the X-foils are made up of different parts as well. 2 wings that they represent, and then engine housing and all that stuff. But when brought into Unity, I went ahead and added to it a combined script so that it would actually, combine it into one object to fly with. Oh, that's why. Let me show you over here. You need to go to the trench thing. So here's the X-Wing. There and F. Dude. Why does it do that? Okay, well, see if I can just zoom in on it. And F. Close, very close. Okay, good. So we have this X-Wing object made up of different parts. All right. Over here, and I've added a combined children script. So the way that you do that is go to component mesh and then combine children. Combines it into one object, so it's one draw call for the X-Wing. But everything still is a separate part for me in my workflow. The wings are still separate, the cockpit is still separate. I don't know if that really means anything to me later on, but the one thing it does mean to me is the one draw call. So that's really good. Well, I guess the one thing that does mean to me is that in my workflow in 3D Studio Max, I don't have to combine all those elements. So my workflow is still there. If later on I want to animate those wings, open the cockpit, I don't have to do a combine and have a separate model and for export and all that crap. So it's really nice. Okay, so that's enough on batching. The next part is lasers for particles for lasers. And so what I did for that, I don't know if it's really a known bug, but like I had mentioned, and it's killing me. I can't. Move over this way. So what I did, all right, so I have line renderers for each of the lasers in the scene. Okay, I'll try to move back now. And the reason I use that is because the particle emitter, the ellipsoid particle emitter, the ellipsoid means that it's going to emit particles from this, this area. And it can be elongated. You can change, X, Y, and Z and make it, like a cigar shape or a perfect sphere, whatever. But those particles are going to emit from a random point within that area. So you're supposed to be able to set that to 0. And in this case, from a laser standpoint, I wanted it to always come from the tip of the laser cannon. But unfortunately, there's some bug where it just on the Z plane, it doesn't adhere to that. It just, no matter what, it'll go from a random point on the Z axis. So what I did to fix that is put in a line renderer. So the first thing you see shooting out of the cannon is actually a line renderer. And then at the tip or at the end of that is where it actually fires off the particle. So we can actually see that in real time here. So if I do that, select emit, back up a bit, and then drag it down so you guys can see it. Okay, so it's emitting, and as you can see, the point, I don't know if you guys can see the square. Yeah, up there. Oops, right around in here. You can see that it actually emits at different locations on the Z-axis. So you guys can't see that when you're playing the game. You just see that this laser continues on down, which is great. And also when you're in the cockpit view, you get this nice fat laser coming by the windshield, and it looks great. Those are the line renderers. They disappear, and what you see continuing on is what is emitted from the particle emitter. So now the cool thing about using the particle emitter is that it's one draw call as well. So as you're firing and as the emitter goes around to each cannon, it's just one draw call for all 10 or 12 lasers you see going down the trench or into outer space. So particles can be your friend as far as draw calls go. Okay, next is collision boxes, or collisions. Really just wanted to show it from the standpoint of the trench. Don't save. Okay. Yeah, we'll pick a good one here, or at least a decent one. Watch. Oh, there we go. Good job. So F worked this time. Okay. So in this particular one, this is one of the more complex objects. This is actually the only obstacle, so I'll tell you guys because nobody else knows. But this is the only obstacle you can shoot in the game to get out of your way. Of course, if you shoot it, you don't get to gain the points by flying by it. So in this, we have, well, first of all, we have these collision. We have a sphere in the middle, and then I have boxes around it to basically define where you can collide with it. And that's great. I mean, that's really nice. Obviously, that you can do this with the phone. It has enough power to do it. But you can't go crazy. And at first, when I first did these obstacles, I did go crazy. I went nuts. And I tried to make every little area have something to collide with. And then, of course, it killed the phone. And I had to pull everything back. And it wasn't, but that was fine. The area, we came to a nice medium area where it made sense. And we had enough to cover what would be considered a collision. So the gameplay was definitely not diminished by that by any means. Now, what we did do, one of the features of the game is that it depends on how you take the obstacle. The amount of points you get for passing an obstacle is dependent upon how you took it. So in this particular one, you can take it down here, and you'll get, say, 300 points. If you take it up here in the nice easy spot, you get a half the points, you get 150. If you fly down here, we're very low to the surface, you're going to get the maximum 300 points. So that's another part of the game. But we didn't put in other collision boxes for finding out where they pass through. That was actually done with code because it made a lot of sense. Each trench section has only 3 obstacles. So it made sense to actually just loop through the current trench section because there's only 3, and to see and compare where it is compared to the X-Wing. So if it hadn't been assessed or passed by yet, you just loop in 3 and then 2 and then 1, and then you move on to the next. So that was much faster than adding collision boxes for places where they might pass through and then giving points based on that. And that I will show you in code. Now you may have noticed really quickly that I switched over to Windows. And I'm going to have to resize this, I apologize. And I use Unity Develop for the work that I do in Unity. So it gives me IntelliSense autocomplete based on Unity's API plus whatever I write. So it makes it a nice editor for that. I don't, right now on this project I hadn't been doing C#, so I'm not using Visual Studio. So this is a great tool. And you can Google that and find it online, and it's free, but it only runs on Windows. So that's why I went in VMware, but it works great as far as going back and forth. So, okay, in Trench Manager, and this is basically it right here, same code. You go smaller here. Okay, so we just check obstacle against X-Wing position. So thanks to Chris a long time ago, basically jumping all over me about not naming my methods that made sense, right? I would have used initials for that, Nobody would have been able to read my code. So I'm very literal now. At any rate, it just does a for loop based on the obstacles in the current container. As you can see, the current trench container. And then it just evaluates where the X-Wing is. And if you've evaluated this trench container already, then you just pass on. So it worked out as far as speed brilliantly, and it gave us enough flexibility to determine did they pass in the hard area or the easy area, and there was a median, was where high and low was determined. So, okay. So now I'm kind of moving into some of the scripting topics of optimization and things to look out for. All right, and that was definitely one of them. The other one is the TIE Flight Manager. And somebody had asked me about how I worked with the X-Wing and the TIE fighters to keep them in the same area. Did I use some sort of bounding sphere? How did I do that? And it's very simple. The concept is done with waypoints. And the Waypoint Manager, which is the TIE Flight Manager, follows the X-Wing around. And it has basically a bunch of waypoints in this random, square area. And the TIE fighters are given a list of waypoints to fly to, and they're constantly trying to get to those waypoints. So the waypoints always follow the X-Wing. That means, therefore, that the TIE fighters also are around the X-Wing no matter what. So you can fly for miles and miles and miles, and you'll still have TIE fighters all the way around you. It's kind of nice. So I'll show you how that works. Okay. And we'll TIE Flight Manager, debug, so we can see it. Okay, so now that that's started, we'll come over here, hit F. Oh, it's killing me. I don't know why it does that. Come on. F, why does it do that? Anybody know why it does that? I hit F. I'm sorry? Half log? Caps lock. Holy crap. Love you. Dude, that was worth like dinner to me. I've never known. That's awesome. Caps lock. I'll never forget. Okay. Caps lock. Everybody else in the room knew, right? Okay. So as you can see right here, as I rotate around and try to get in a position, that's a pretty good position right there. You can see the spheres. So the debug mode shows the spheres up there and so forth. And that's it. They're waypoints. That's what I call them. They're just points in space. and the TIE fighters get a random list of waypoints to fly to. It's a very simple concept, and the cool thing about it is that when you're moving, it's moving with you, and so is the Death Star surface. We'll get into that in a bit. So they're always moving with you, and the idea then, on top of that, trying to get to their waypoint, is that they're also checking the X-Wing. They have like a cone area, an angle. And if your X-Wing falls within that targeting angle, then you become the waypoint in the target. So if you start to fly away, they eventually will target you, and you'll have all 4 TIE fighters right on you. So it's really nice. It worked out great that way. Then in a dogfight scene, if you pull hard enough, if you go high enough or do whatever, maneuver, you can break out of that angle eventually. And so that's another nice part of the gameplay, is that you're not just sitting there flying in circles the entire time, which is very boring. Something I hated about X-Wing versus TIE Fighter. How many people played that game? Yeah, I've heard a lot of people saying, oh man, I hope they do that. And I'm just like, that game sucked. I mean, it was okay, and I waited to the day it was released to go play it, but you just sat there doing donuts with your friends. You know what I mean? You just kept going around, and then finally you get somebody in the game who knew how to fire missiles and target, and then you were just dead, and it was no fun. So anyway, that was something that I had to consider on this, was to make sure that you weren't just constantly flying in donuts, and it's not it at all. You can actually do an evasive maneuver, break out of that cone, and then target the TIE fighter. Because by the time you break that cone, he realizes, I can't target the TIE fighter or the X-Wing anymore. I'm going to choose another waypoint and fly normally. So that gives you a chance to come around and target him. Now, as the game progresses in the arcade mode, you get faster, the TIE fighters get faster, their targeting range gets wider, and it becomes much harder to get out of their targeting, and they're a lot more aggressive, and they can shoot you a lot easier. And that's what the arcade mode is for, to see how many levels high you can get and how fast you can really go. So that's the whole point. TIE Flight Manager. Okay, great. So that's the TIE. That's a kind of an intro of the TIE Flight Manager. Let me see. TIE Flight Manager. Okay, another aspect of the TIE Flight Manager, and this is very important also, that they will tell you in the docs. This isn't just me saying this. But the game engine. Let me open up the game engine. Update. Go to games. This is what you get when you don't have events, and so it's kind of do this, do that, wait. Anyway, the idea here with the update is that I have one update, pretty much I have one update call in a game object in the entire application when the game is running. So when you create a component or a game object, the first thing it does is give you function update, which is nice. They're trying to help you out. But in reality, what you should try to do is try to just have one, and that one then should tell your managers or your other things that you need those updates on frame to tell them to do their job. So I call it do update instead. So in this case, we have, if we're not in the dogfight level, we're calling trench manager do update. And if I am flying, if I am doing free flight, then it's TIE Flight Manager doing the update. So with that, we'll take a look at that really quickly. Do update. I feel bad I'm not posing for these pictures. Are you getting a good side? Anyway, there's no good side. I know. I got it. I know. Anyway. Update. Come on, where are you? Do update. Well, it really doesn't matter. You guys will probably just sit there and stare at it and go, what the hell is he doing? But at any rate, oh, there it is. Well, let's do radar update, but whatever. The idea is that it all comes through the TIE Flight Manager, okay? And he takes care of telling all the TIE fighters when to actually move. So that he calls the TIE Fighter dot do update. All right, so it just kind of basically rains down, and then all the TIE fighters do their targeting and their movement, and it's all the TIE fighters are using rigid bodies, so it's using add relative force and all that other stuff. And it is all done through the TIE Flight Manager, and that starts at the game engine. So that is actually very nice that way. It's faster to run one update method and do all those loops or do all that work through that than it is to have several update methods through different or several objects. And then updating radar, and that's where I was with that. Okay, so radar update. So when you play the game, and we'll play this real quick. You notice it has this radar that goes around the screen, right? And so each TIE fighter has a radar object, and it registers with the radar manager. But the updates are handled by the trench run, or the TIE flight manager. Man, my own nomenclature is killing me. So those updates are handled that way as well. Okay, so what's key about that is that the radar needs a data object, and now we're going to get into discussion about accessing objects, and this is very important as well. When we create a TIE fighter, I did see that just recently. Create TIEs. Here we go. I create a TIE radar object. What you notice is that I also create a game object reference, a TIE transform reference, and then a TIE fighter reference. So the TIE fighter is actually the component that I wrote. And so the radar actually has to access all three, or something with all three of those objects. And by providing this basically it's a data object, increase the speed, and that the radar doesn't have to do lookups to go get component, or game object.transform. That also takes and requires a lookup. So instead of having that, I'm actually giving it the transform reference right there. Okay, so that's something to definitely remember is to give those references. Yeah, storing the references. So I had a different one up here that kind of illustrates that whole thing. Here it is. Okay, so in TIE Fighter itself, we have fire lasers. And fire lasers only happens when you have the X-Wing targeted and it's stayed in target for a certain amount of time, and then it'll fire, and then you have to take in consideration, like, is it on what level of difficulty, or if you're in arcade mode, what level are they in, and all that crazy other crap. But at the point where you do fire, this is where it comes. You'll notice that I put these private variables outside of this. So on the iPhone, it actually is very costly in terms of speed to allocate memory within a method. Okay, so if you do a var right there, that takes time. So you should find, if you look through all of my code, that all of those allocations are done basically when the script is instantiated. Okay, it's outside of the methods. And then I don't know if this is a really good way to do it or a standards way of doing it, but I typically put the private vars, or put those vars that have to do with that particular method block right above it. And it seems to be very easy to go back and manage, especially when I'm going and cleaning up code. You know what I mean? I can never tell sometimes, and there's this whole list at the top. And I got a list, trust me, it's at the top. Up here. Where does it start? Yeah, so I mean, it's like that. And sometimes you just sit there and you stare at it going, I'm not sure what I use. So I started putting everything that was particular to that method right next to it. Much easier to go back and clean up, see what you need. So keep your instantiation or those allocations outside and at the point of instantiation. Faster. Okay, cool. Wow, that was a lot. Okay, great. So I'm now actually glad to go back to a slide for just a second. Now, sound was a really big deal in this game, and I came into it. I've been playing in this game for over 6 years now, and I had just, I wanted to be as realistic to the movie, as true as I could be. I wanted to keep the sound of the music. I wanted to play music tracks that went along with the particular scenes and the levels in the game. So the game has, in mission mode, 5 levels. And a part of that is like Darth Vader chasing you, there's the exhaust port, and every single one of those had their own music in the movie. It's very distinct. And I went out, and when I first created the sound engine, I had playlists, and I created this whole audio engine basically to manage the music that I wanted to do. And then I was hitting this huge brick wall with the iPhone, and I had all this music, and the memory was just shot, and it was crashing the whole thing. So I learned very quickly that I could really, literally, I could do things to get around that. But what I ended up doing was using one compressed music file, per scene. And that was literally what I ended up doing. So I'm sure if I had more time to work with it, I could, write up another playlist that loaded another resource and all that stuff. But it worked out just fine. We have a nice size file, the music plays, it fits the mood, the whole thing. But some of the things we learned out of that, obviously with wave and uncompressed, you can play those wave files in succession over and over again. So you can play lasers and explosions at the same time and many times. But with compressed audio like MP3, you cannot do that. You can only do one at a time on the iPhone. So that's why we say use it or leave it for the music or the back end. We also found that the iPhone's default is 22 kilohertz, 16, and that's probably the fastest if you just stick with that. The quality was fine. It sounded just fine. But as far as with the iPhone default, we just wanted to stick with that, get as much speed as we could, and that was what was recommended to us. So if you can and also it's very important to keep everything the same format. That's very important. So if you have one that slipped through at 44, that could actually cost you in terms of speed on the iPhone especially. Use resources.load when possible. So, in the game, there are scenes where, you have an X-Wing, you have laser fire, it's going to be a part and used with the X-Wing. But there were other things like voiceovers where you just weren't sure, if he was going to be in outer space, he wasn't going to hear Ben Kenobi talking to him. So that VO would be saved for the trench, those type of things. So those we would load with resources.load, and that would be, at the time of need, much better. And then bitmaps, that was a huge consideration. I haven't really talked at all about that in the 3 sessions I've done, but bitmaps is a huge consideration when you're doing iPhone. You can do the largest, I think, is 1024, but I wouldn't recommend it. It may look beautiful, but I bet 512 looks just as good. In most cases, it really does. But in terms of memory and in performance, go as small as you possibly can and take that into consideration. Recommend no bigger than 256 if you can handle it at all. The trench actually does use 512 on the walls, and that's just because it just didn't look good enough at 256. So there's one example where I chose one thing that I was going to go rich on, and for me, the experience of the trench, I wanted it to be as good as possible. So if it doesn't look good and doesn't fly well, who gives a crap if you get to shoot TIE fighters? Well, that's probably not true, but you know what I'm saying, right? You'll still do it, but it'll look better when you do it right. So, and if you're looking for places to trim the fat on your application, start with the bitmaps and definitely look at the audio. These are 2 areas that we spend a lot of time in getting the application as small as possible and also in good running condition. I will show, actually, it's very important to show this, so I'll go ahead and do it. Now, with the trench, go ahead and show you this. So the trench in explanation is nothing more, and I don't want to downplay it, but it's just this. It's a curved plane. I just spherified a plane. That's all I did. And the plane moves with the X-Wing. And what's animated to give you the effect of flying over something or passing over it, I'm actually altering the UVs of the bitmap. So that's all I'm doing. What we were trying to solve there is that you never get out of bounds. You never get past the bounds of the Death Star surface, and also you don't have to manage like trying to leapfrog different pieces of geometry around to accommodate where you're flying to. So this experience just took care of all of that, and it works great as far as speed. But as far as the bitmap for this, what I'll try to do is zoom in a bit so we can see a good sample. All right. And see if I can find the material for that. All right, so just come on. There we go. Surface uses this. Okay. First of all, this is Blendy the shader. And I didn't name it that way. Andy Zupko, who wrote the shader for me, who works for Infrared 5, he, of course, being him, he's an Ewok lover is what he is. he named it Blendy the shader. Can you believe that? Anyway, put it in a cool Star Wars game, we got Blendy the shader. But all it does is composite basically these 2 images together to make it look like you have this nice shadow work going on with a real sunlight effect on it. And all you have to do is just sit here and mess with the shader. If I've got the right one going on here. Let me see. I've got the game going. And I will select the Death Star. Where are you? Death Star Service Plane 0. Here we are. So you can adjust the shade or this slider. And basically you're adjusting the blend mode between the two. It's a really nice effect. You can dial it right in. And this is at playtime as well. So I've got it paused, and I can unpause it and let the game play. and I can sit here and work with it. Oh, well, that was fun. That made it good. There you go. I wouldn't recommend that. Worked before. Okay, and while I'm in here, because I know I didn't cover this in the slides, for those of you who right now, raise your hand if you do iPhone development in Unity. Oh, wow. So really preaching to the choir here. That's awesome. Well, but I'm still going to do this so you can see. So one of the coolest things for development in Unity is the ability to use your iTouch or iPhone with Unity Remote installed on it. And it will connect over Wi-Fi connection to your desktop basically and to Unity. So it'll let you sit there and control your models or your game right there. So you don't have to compile it and put it over to Xcode and then install it on your device, especially if you were just sitting there nudging like sensitivity, and things like that. That would get old really fast. But it's not picking up on the web service. You get the point. I'll show it to you. If you really want to see it, I'll break out my laptop and I'll show it to you. That fair enough? That good? Okay, good enough. Because that one is a tough one. It's not tough when you're doing it at home, but at every conference that I've trying to show this 3 times now, and just because it's Wi-Fi enabled, usually that's a nightmare to try to demo to people in a huge room who are all trying to get on the internet. So there you go. All right, we'll stop the playback on that. We'll go back over to the slides. Okay, great. Yeah, this is really important. So the use iPhone specific shaders. So 1.5, they released these other shaders that were specific to iPhone, and you definitely want to use those. Up until that point, I was using the shaders that came with Unity Pro, and so self-illumination being one of them. Light map is the other one. So the trench uses a light map shader. But they came out with ones that were specific to iPhone. They're much faster, and I think that the idea is that probably less passes trying to accommodate the same visual, and it really does do a good job. Another thing to point out is iPhone script call optimization. So in the player settings, you set it to fast but no exceptions. And this is something that I had asked, but I didn't get a response on. So maybe you guys know, but I think that this is only a pro. Is this only a pro feature? Does anybody know?
Yes, it is.
Definitely. It's definitely only a pro feature? Yeah, that's what I thought. But I'll point it out, fast but no exceptions right here makes a huge difference. It did for this game, made a massive difference. We saw a lot of speed increase. So that one right there, I'd have to say, is well worth the money for the pro version if your game requires speed. And this one definitely does. So they also did a nice thing, where you can detect whether you're running on a 3G, iTouch 2nd Gen, or 3GS phone. And we literally did make a 3G a version of the trench. So if you guys have a 3G device and you play this game, you'll still get the same game experience as far as flying and everything, but this is the trench version that you'll get. It's very flat, doesn't have much geometry at all on the trench. But the fact that we were given that ability to detect what device we were on so that we could make a game experience across the different versions of devices was great. So, trying to if we didn't have this option, then the game would overall be basically dumbed down to accommodate, that device. Or you would have to make that hard decision not to support the 3G. And we didn't have to get to that. So the gameplay runs very well. But the difference is we have some upgraded graphics if you're running the iTouch 2nd Gen or the 3GS phone. It looks awesome. It still looks really good on the 3G. So with that, okay, and then use GUI Manager. How many people have heard of GUI Manager? Not that many. How many people have used it? Wow, just a few people. All right. It was an interesting thing to get into. It's kind of hard to see it up here on the screen, but what it does essentially is it takes its own camera and then takes these elements and puts them on planes in front of the camera. And that basically is added to your scene on top. So for this game, we have score, we have shields, we have the ability to go into cockpit mode, and then we also have the radar down here. As you can see, these are the boxes for the radar. So what it does is take up one draw call, but still gives us all the GUI. Otherwise, we'd be talking about 7 or 8 draw calls just to handle score, shields, cockpit, and then it becomes an issue. You think, well, I guess we've got to strip out the ability to fly in a cockpit view, which would suck because it's great, to fly in cockpit view. I'll try to show it to you here in the game so you can see it at runtime. Dogfight scene, you're my friend. Okay. All right, so we'll let him fly around. Actually, we'll just do this. And then we'll go to GUI Manager right here. Okay, great. So, there we go. We can start to see the elements. So there's the camera, and he's in an ortho view, by the way, to do this. So if I come from behind or do this, we'll just let it run like that. So I'll just unpause it there. Okay, so you see all those elements moving around up here, and it's just sitting in the middle of my scene. So the cameras, they can't see each other's, basically their stuff, if you want to call it that. The GUI Manager sees what it's supposed to see. That's added to the main scene's camera, and then that's the effect you get. You get the actual, in your scene. Actually, it's too small. Let me move that back up. There we go. So now your GUI is right there in the game. You turn on. Oh, this is touch. Sorry, wrong one. Anyway, if I went into cockpit mode, then you would see the cockpit overlaid in the scene. But that accounts for one draw call. And so I'd highly encourage everybody to try out GUI Manager. If you're doing iPhone stuff, like I said, it's a huge help as far as the draw calls go. All right. Ooh, click. Okay, so Unity tips that we've come across, and I've already covered a lot of these, but the low poly counts, 7,000 to 10,000, draw calls under 30. Each GUI element, if you put on a button, GUI text, all those things, label, they all cost you one draw call. So definitely get in the GUI Manager. Skyboxes are 6 draw calls. So in the trench scene, we actually did do, in the dogfight scene, we did do a skybox. That's okay because of how many elements we actually had out there. It's a pretty light scene. And so we could afford to go ahead and take the 6 draw calls there, and it made most sense. In the trench, however, because we were limited there, what we did, let me get down there again. F works now, awesome. All right, so you see in this view right now, you see stars sitting up there, right? And now as I come back out, you'll start to see this edge of this box. So what's happening in reality is that there's this box. Let me select that. Where are you? Let me just select the whole X-Wing. Skybox, here we go. So there's this box. Doggone it. There we go. I don't know if you can see this box right here. So there's a box, and that box has one material applied to it. It sits around the X-Wing and its camera, and it has a material or a shader applied to it called Z-off. So anything basically anything that's on that cube or that material will show up behind anything else in your scene. And so the whole time when you're flying, the X-Wing's actually flying with this box right around it the whole time, and it's one draw call. So instead of 6, which I couldn't afford. So it was either that box or no stars, and we went with stars. So. All right. That was found on the forums. So just do a search for Z-off on the forums, and you'll find it right there. No exceptions, you're right. Fast but no exceptions, that's a good one. Reuse of materials as much as possible. Like I said, if you're going to do combined children on objects, make sure that those objects share a texture, and then you can do that. And that definitely is a trick in some cases, especially with the trench. It was a huge trick. Texture sizes do make a difference, and in quality settings, I put in there pixel light equals 0, and then turn off the anti-aliasing. So I would just encourage you to play with the quality settings before you put it on the iPhone. It's another area where you might be able to gain some performance. And then this is a picture of here on the side of the trench way back before we had the materials applied to it with the old X-Wing. We were still doing the early stuff. Some more Unity tips, I guess, if you want to call it that. Fixed update calls. Fixed update is used for, it actually is called many more times than update. And it's for physics primarily. So try to keep those as lean as possible. There you go. Keep them as lean as possible. Beware of empty update functions. Like I said, when you create a new class, it will create a function called update for you. And if you just leave it there and there's nothing in it, there's still some, price you pay for having it there. Make references to transforms and game objects. So I put in here, it is possible to do something like myGameObject.transform.GameObject.transform.position, which is completely circular. But it'll still cost you, right? But they'll still let you do it if you really want to do it that way. Don't do that. Just say like target transform equals target.transform, and you're going to save time to make that reference one time and move on. I'd say also do that for your singletons. I use some singletons in here. Don't just do, like xwing manager dot get instance dot whatever. Make your reference xm equals, xwing manager dot get instance, and then the rest of the time it's xm dot whatever. And then coroutines are your friends. Update can be used to check for a condition, then offload it to a coroutine, things like that. Definitely want to keep that in mind. And I'm not going to tell you what that picture is. Errors and stuff I miss. So this is the... Keith Peter works for Infrared 5. So yesterday, I talked about Keith quite a few. He had a whole slide dedicated to him. And I never mentioned that, he works with us at Infrared 5. So I just want to clear that up. He works at Infrared 5. Ben Troop, developer of the detonator explosion package for Unity. So we actually, we converted this over the web. We did all these glorious things like adding real-time lighting, different explosions, and so we used the detonator explosion package. And Ben's probably not here. Ben, are you here? Raise your hand if you're here. No, he's not even in the room. He did the whole thing. And I made the sad mistake of when he told me where I am, he says, oh yeah, you should try the detonator package. I wrote the whole thing. I'm like, yeah, right. Anyway, and he did. But he's a great 3D modeler. He's a great modeler, and it just didn't hit me that he'd be doing something like that. He did do it, and it's awesome. And if you want to see the web version, let me know. I'll show you the web version. It's nice. Rebecca Smith-Allen was the art director for the Trench Run. She helped out. Obviously, she did a lot of all of the GUI layout stuff, but also was very much involved in like the trench and like just a lot of the setting and keeping everything unified and true, if you want to call it that. Todd Anderson also works for Infrared 5, so he's the guy who did the Cocoa stuff. And then maybe if you're into Flex or anything like that, you may have heard of his name, but that's kind of a testament to what's going on in Flash world these days. Is that a lot of those developers are moving over to doing iPhone and Unity stuff. I'm a testament to that. I've been doing Flash for years, on Flex work. So, yeah, there you go. Han Solo shot first. Just want to make that point. You've seen the original movies, right? Hi.
Spoke too soon.
Yeah.
Script call optimization is a Unity basic, iPhone basic feature, and build size stripping is the pro, is the advanced.
Oh, okay. Okay, all right. So what she was saying was that the fast with no exceptions is available in both versions. So that's really good. So you don't have to pay the extra price for Pro. The stripping part of code, which I will show you that, just to go full circle. Under project settings, under player. So they have the stripping level, which you have the ability to choose how much you want. So the idea here is that you may have things included in Unity which you didn't even use. And so this is your opportunity to say, okay, let's just strip out this and make sure you strip out this amount of stuff and blah, blah, blah. So I used on this project, use micro, MS, core lib. There you go. I'm not really the expert, as you can tell. That's why I'm saying there you go. So, oh, we get to go through this again. Yay. I like those. So Han shot first, I just want to say, in 1977. I was 8 years old when I saw the movie. Just want to see this really quickly. I thought it was the coolest freaking thing when I saw him, right? Here comes Grden, takes him over the table. He's about to shoot him. And the whole time Han Solo is like pulling out his pistol and just blows him away. And I thought that was the coolest thing ever as a kid. I loved that. And then in 1997 in the re-release, they did this crappy thing where they made Han Solo duck when, Greden shot him and then shoot back like it was self-defense. That's bullshit. Sorry, right? Yeah, damn straight. He had balls. Anyway, and Chris Allen loves Ewoks. Thanks. That's it. Thanks for coming. I appreciate it. Do I take questions? All right. I guess we can do any questions? No technical questions. Go ahead.
How do you feel about Gungans?
Gungans? There's only one I don't like. Now, I just went over to the Presidio for a tour. There is, if you ever get a chance to go over there, they will show you the stuff on the wall. They have in carbonite. Here's Han Solo, right, in that prop. And then they have one of Jar Jar Binks in carbonite. And Lucas apparently he went to one of the Star Wars conferences. He's only been to 2. And this one was in 2006, and it was a fan prop. Some guy made it, and Lucas saw it. George Lucas walked by and says, "Yeah, I'd love to buy that off you." I don't know what the price was, but now it's hanging over here in the Presidio. So, yeah. No, don't get me going on that.
How was your experience working at the licensing?
Well, I'm sorry. What was the second half of that? Working at what?
Working at the licensing.
Oh, the licensing details. Yeah. Well, my experience with it was that I had to submit my models. I did the TIE Fighter, I did the X-Wing, Ben Troop did the Darth Vader TIE Fighter, I did the trench modeling. So we had to submit those for review. That process, well, for me being a Star Wars fan, it was cool. I enjoyed it because they were very detailed. I mean, I had to remove a red line off of the engine fuselage of the X-Wing. I mean, they were really, very about it. So from my perspective of it, it was very detailed. I'll say that, and they're very serious. We even have some, and I know we have a lot of time, but there were other stories about features we wanted to put in. I'll tell this one. This is a good one. We wanted to put in flying the torpedoes. Everybody's played the trench run. You shoot the torpedoes, and then that's it. If you hit it, the game's over. Well, in this game, in our game, you have to not only hit the hole, but you have to pull out. If you don't, you hit the back wall. So that's just one extra thing. But I wanted to have you fly the torpedoes. So I was thinking, let's go to Lucas. Let's tell him, hey, you know what? We want to do like a force thing, like Luke flew the torpedoes down the trench. And we sent that off to Lucas, and they came back and said, no. At that time, Luke had only, the same abilities that Anakin had when he first became aware of the Force, which was just basic, reflexes, and he could only be capable of reflexes at that point in time. And I went, wow, okay. So why don't we call that guided missile now? You know what I mean? Yeah, they're very serious, and they're like, if you just really realize how much, if you think you're a fan, all the guys that work there, they're massive fans, and that was a cool experience. There were a few other things that I learned that I had no idea about the movie. Things that were omitted and all that stuff. But, the opening scene, I will say this. The opening scene the opening scene of Battle of Yavin, in the extended version, they have all the X-Wings flying in, right? Real nice, pan shot of Luke flying in his X-Wing, and there's R2-D2, right? Charging in a battle. I got kicked back. When I first showed them the X-Wing, it had 3. It had 3 stripes up on the wing. You can't even see anymore. But anyway, I had red 3 was the X-Wing. And I knew that red 5, trust me, I know, 5 stripes. But I didn't have it that way. They saw it, they kicked back, and they said, hey, this is Luke's X-Wing, it's got to have 5 stripes. I know that. I said, why don't you take a look at your movie and look at that Battle of Yavin scene where he's flying by, and there's Luke, and there's R2-D2, and there's 2 stripes on the wing. So, and then, of course, when I went over there, they were saying, yeah, that's actually every X-Wing in that scene is red too. And it's true. If you play really slow, they all have 2 stripes. So I was vindicated. They slapped me around, and I said, hey, I know what's going on. Anyway, but any other questions? Go ahead.
Yeah, you mentioned that you had an easy time porting to the
web.
Would it have been feasible to keep the web version alive during development, and so you have to stop what you're doing just for a few days?
No. Yeah, no, I didn't think it made sense. We had thought, that'd be great. Let's, when we get done with this, let's port it over to the web. And as I was building it, I specifically, kept things abstracted code-wise, knowing that I would want to do that, and I did. But no, trying to keep the 2 alive at the same time would have been a freaking nightmare. Literally, though, I can take pieces that I fixed, though, afterwards. Like, I did convert it back to the web. And there were things I fixed on the iPhone version, and they were completely applicable, still completely the same code. I just took that that class and copied it right over into the X-Wing. And so from that point of view, when I was doing bug fixes, it was boom, boom, boom. The only thing that was different was the controls. Like I said, the touches and then the X-Wing flight controls were different. But no, I wouldn't recommend trying to do side by side unless you had the same delivery date. Well, then there you go. But yeah, I wouldn't recommend it. But let me know if you guys want to see that web version. You guys want to see the web version? You do? Can we do that? Oh, what time? Are they going to kick me out? Oh, is the next speaker in the room? Raise your hand if you're the next speaker. Oh, I probably should get going. Yeah, thanks. Is there any more questions? No? All right, cool. That's it then. Thanks, guys.